Compressors, along with noise gates, are some of the most popular and widely used dynamic processing in audio mixing and production. They are everywhere, from external hardware units to plugins in digital mixing consoles and audio workstations. And in this video, I'll go through everything you need to know for you to start using compressors in your live mix. A compressor is a tool that is used to reduce or narrow the dynamic range of an audio signal. The dynamic range of an audio signal is the difference in level or volume between the loudest part and the softest part of the audio signal. Now here is how it works. Assuming this is the dynamic range of your audio signal, this is not perfect illustration by the way, but it should give you an idea of how a compressor works. So let's assume this is the dynamic range of our audio signal, with this being the loudest part of the signal and this being the softest part of the audio signal. What a compressor does is that it reduces the loudest part of the signal above the threshold. I will discuss all of that in a couple of moments, and then having done that, you can then increase the new dynamic range, so that what you get is that the loudest part of the signal won't be too loud and the softest part of the signal will not be too quiet, thereby making your overall audio signal sound more consistent. Let me quickly demonstrate how a compressor works with my voice. I've plugged the Shure SM58 dynamic microphone to this mixing console. This is the Roland vMixer M400. It's a digital console that has been around for a very long time. I think it's over 10 years now, but works very well. I've plugged it to this channel 33, and the only EQ I've done here is just to apply a high pass filter at 100 Hz just to remove the boominess from my voice, and every other thing is flat. So let's go to the compressor session. The first thing you notice here is that there are a couple of parameters to the compressor. The first one here is the threshold. The threshold simply means is a point after which the compressor kicks in. So when the signal passes the threshold that has been set, the compressor actually starts working. The ratio determines the extent to which the compressor compresses the sound, if that makes sense. So a ratio of 2.5 to 1 simply means after the threshold, when the input signal to the compressor increases by 2.5 dB, the output signal should increase by only 1 dB. So a lower ratio, for example, sounds more natural. So for example, a ratio of 1 to 1 simply means no compression at all. And a higher ratio, 16 to 1 all the way to infinity to 1, simply means infinity to 1 is like a limiter. It simply means after the threshold, no matter how loud the signal gets, the output of the compressor will remain the same. So I can shout as much as I like, and if we just keep my voice, limit my voice at a particular point. We've talked about threshold and ratio. We have attack and release times. These two parameters determines how fast the compressor kicks into action after the signal passes the threshold, and how fast the signal stops. The compressor stops working on the signal when the signal goes below the threshold. These two parameters, attack and release times, are quite tricky for less experienced users because every type of instrument requires a different range of settings to obtain a good sound. A fast attack time of 5 milliseconds or less would compress most transient sounds and would be suitable for use with vocals and melody instruments where you want your sound to be compressed as soon as it's crosses the threshold. But it would not be preferable for sounds like drums, slap bass, or guitar strumming because it would reduce the natural punch and attack associated with these instruments, which gives them their character. In this case, a slower attack time of 25 to about 50 milliseconds would be the best approach. So the compressor should be able to allow the initial sound to go through without compression and then be able to compress the rest of the sound. The release time, on the other hand, needs to be varied depending on how fast the instrument is played. So for vocals and melody instruments, a slower release time of about 100 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds should work best to give you a smooth compression. But for fast and rhythm instruments, a faster release time of about 40 to 80 milliseconds should be okay. But there are no specific rules to this. Just find time to experiment with what you have to understand what works best for your situation. Now we have the knee. The knee simply determines whether the compression kicks in immediately or the compression actually comes in gradually. If you actually check out this compression graph here, once I increase the knee, this is a hard knee, and you can see here the compressor kicks in. Once the signal crosses the threshold, it comes in very fast. But when I take the need to soft, you can see the compression actually comes in gradually. So that's just what the need does. But then the gain, this, for example, if after squashing your signal using the compressor, you find that your output is kind of a little bit low, you can use the gain to increase the output a little bit to match the input, depending on what works for you. So let's quickly, we have a ratio of 4:1, an attack time of, let's say, around 5 milliseconds, and okay, and a release time of, let's say, 100. Now let's set a threshold until the compressor starts, kicks into action. So as you can see here, I'm having about between -3 to -6 dB of compression. So the higher part of my voice, higher dynamic range of my voice is being compressed just to give me a more consistent sound. So if I, for example, maybe I'm trying to emphasize, preaching and trying to emphasize a word or a sentence, and I shout, for example, as you can see, the compressor actually handles those that spike in volume. Let's go to maybe 16:1, which is something that's not practical for vocal application. So as you can see, if I increase my volume, I'm shouting, like talking very loud right now, and you can see the compressor is actually kicking in, trying to contain the volume. And no matter how loud I shout, my volume is not going to increase a lot. Now for demonstrations on how to use compressors and noise gates in an actual live mix, click this video right here. Or maybe you should first watch my video on noise gates. Yeah, it should be somewhere around here. Thank you for sticking around till the end of this video. I'm Kelvin. I'll see you in the next one.